Kids who ran away, what's your story? My mom is a narcissist, of the worst kind, managed to get full custody and drive my dad away for good. My older sister and I became really close because she made our lives hell. 8 years of lies and manipulation and emotional whiplash from her. I always wanted to get out, but never could figure out a way how because she had me so trapped under her thumb. When I started working in the food industry, I befriended a manager, Nina, in her early 20s. We initially bonded over our shared experiences with being ourselves around relatives, but eventually I told her about the cruelty I lived through at home. She began to encourage me to get out because it was just getting worse. She offered me a room in her house and said she wouldn't expect me to pay rent for a while. She just wanted me safely away from my mom's cruelty. So from December 2018 until May 2019, Nina and I planned out finances, how I would still attend college, get a car, etc. Nina got me a bed for my room, a desk, a bookshelf, little knickknacks, and helped me little by little sneak my belongings from my mom's house into hers. We set the Runaway day to be the night I graduated high school because then it would be in public so my mom couldn't try to hurt me, and I would be legally free to go by then. My plans to run away gradually became known among the management team at my store as graduation drew nearer. We even got my sister a burner phone for the night of graduation after I took off, in case my mom tried to take away her phone and she needed to contact me or the police if my mom got violent. When graduation concluded, I walked out of the ceremony to the parking lot. I faked like I was going to the passenger side of the car so that Nina, who had planned to be at my side, could come out of the crowd of exiting graduates and join me. I then doubled around to the driver's side where my mom was getting in. I told her I wasn't coming home with her. She turned around, saw Nina and I, and she started freaking out once she put two and two together. I'll admit that I exploded on her, drawing the attention of some of the people leaving the graduation ceremony. She got furious at this because she's very concerned with her image in front of other people. She seemed more angry about the fact that I was humiliating her in public rather than the fact that I was running off on her. She tried to incorporate Nina and my sister in the argument. She kept saying that she never mistreated me and I was lying. I realized I couldn't make her understand her wrongdoing, so Nina and I took off across the parking lot and left. I spent the night of high school graduation in a house I hadn't lived in before, crying my eyes out and trying to process everything that had happened. In the 3 months that followed my departure from home, my mom used my sister, who still lived at home, to try and guilt trip me into coming back. My mom even came back by my workplace a few times to try and catch me off guard. She threatened to call the cops on Nina, promised that she would have her followed, have her fired, get a restraining order on her, and told my entire family that I had been brainwashed and abducted. She went to the operator of the store Nina and I work at and tried to convince him of why Nina should be fired. My mom would blow up my phone with incredibly long texts about how ungrateful I was for all she did for me, and how I needed to forgive her because she was sorry. When I came out of the closet to her after running away, she told my whole family that my abductor had turned me. So I blocked her on social media and blocked her number, effectively cutting her off again completely this time. She has no way of contacting me, and as of now, it's been 4 months since I ran away, 3 months since I started talking to her after running away, and 2 weeks since I cut her off completely again. It's been the hardest 6 months of my life. Hold on to the people who help you and hold on to the knowledge that you deserve to not be trapped. It's hard going from a cage to a wide open space because it feels like falling. But freedom is worth fighting for. Story 2. I ran away because CPS refused to help me. My parents divorced when I was 10. I was going to live with my mom and visit my father for the summer. Mom was in Indiana, father was in Florida. After we got to my dad's house, he started pressing me and my 3 brothers. He kept asking if we were mistreated and asked over and over for about 10 minutes. Finally, my brother said, "Okay, fine, we were," and the rest of us followed his lead. We just wanted to be left alone, and it was kind of an awkward conversation. Now keep in mind, nothing had actually happened. After that, my father took us all to see a therapist or something and told us to repeat what was said. He kind of went over our story before to make it more believable. The lie kept getting bigger, so me and the older brother tried telling him that it wasn't actually true, but we were threatened with things like, "Yes, it did happen. If you ever say it didn't, I'll see to it that you never walk again." Over the next 6 years, his cruelty kept getting worse. I had no contact with my mom, and he was constantly talking smack about her. I attempted to end it all and was put in a mental facility for 3 days. I talked with CPS and told them everything and that I wanted to live with my mother. They were very sympathetic and agreed to do everything in their power for me. My last day in the facility, they sat me down and told me, "Yeah, we looked into your situation. With your dad having full custody and your mother in another state, it's just too much work for us, and it's best if we let the situation resolve itself." Then they sent me back to my father. It got to the point where I knew I couldn't stay there, so I found my mom on Facebook and told her everything. She bought me a bus ticket from Florida to Indiana, and I left home at 4:30 a.m. There was a time where I thought I'd been caught. I was stopped in Orlando, and an officer approached me and started asking me questions. "Where are you going? What's your name?" That sort of thing. He said he just noticed I'd been there for a while and wanted to check up on me, and I told him how I missed my bus. It was actually full, but an 8-hour wait for the next one, and he left me alone. The rest of the trip went as smoothly as a 24-hour bus ride can. It took my father a week to realize I was gone, and I had to hide from the police for another week. Then there was an emergency custody hearing, and well, him saying I left 7 days after I did just didn't look well on him. So my mom got custody, and when I told her nothing had happened when we were 10, she was convinced it was the truth. She got to work on getting custody of my younger brothers. My father no longer has custody of any of us, and I haven't seen him in years. My mom did consider a lawsuit with CPS, but didn't go through with it. Alright, so after hearing all of this and hearing, I guess, both sides, in my opinion, the mom should have just gone through with the lawsuit. Sounds like a easy win to me. Story 3. I tried to run away. I was being infantilized by one parent, forced to grow up too fast by the other, and going through emotional cruelty every single day that was enabled. I was neglected to the point that I had to live off of my best friend's lunches, junk food that I found and hid in my bedroom, and fast food. One of my parents was a genuine narcissistic sociopath. I've been online from a very young age and really didn't have as much supervision as I should have had. I was planning to run away with someone I had been talking to for years. They were actually a catfish, much older than me, and in my heart, I think I knew that it was too good to be true, but I was so ready to just leave everything behind that I didn't even care. I just needed a reason to get out of my house since I didn't have the guts to myself. My running away was planned down to the nearest detail. I didn't skimp on anything. I spent over 6 months planning my escape. I knew all the harsh realities of running away, homelessness, literally needing to fend for myself, and I fully accepted them. I don't think I understood just how many bad people there were out there, but once again, it was all worth it for a new life. I researched how to steal things so that I would have enough to eat should I ever need it, and how to live on the streets. I thought about how I would keep warm in the blistering winters and keep cool in the sweltering heat. I took note of places I could stay. I stole a small amount of money off my parents' dresser to top up what I already had of my own. I was going to completely change my appearance, go by a completely different name, and I practiced being that person for around an hour almost every single night. I've never had to sleep all that much, so I planned to use that to my advantage and make my way to another part of Canada overnight. Whether that was on foot, by bus, by train, whatever it took. I even got a little ahead of myself and thought maybe I could smuggle myself into the United States or somehow, without a passport, take a plane to England. The further away I was from home, the better. I was ready to leave everything and everyone behind. I had only the bare essentials on my back. I never made it all that far. I had slipped out of the house multiple times to try my hand at yet another escape, and no one knew, and something in me always made me go back. If I had succeeded, it would have literally been a case of here today, gone tomorrow. No one ever suspected I might never be in their lives again. As an adult now, a small part of me wishes I would have completely gone through with it. Things have gotten better, but only to a point. I am a mentally ill wreck with struggles I'll literally never overcome, and I know part of it has to do with the fact that I had to grow up in that crap show. I'm not as naive as I was. Obviously, the dangers of the world are much greater than younger me could ever know or understand, and I don't think anyone is truly prepared to be homeless. I'd still do it anyway. I don't feel anything when I look back at this point in my life. Like most of my childhood, I prefer to just sort of forget about it and pretend that it was normal. I would be sad today if I left everything and everyone behind, but it sounds horrible, but I feel like it would be worth it. I just wanted, and want, a second chance at the life I never got. I wish I was someone else with someone else's life. This one was a tough one, and I really hope the best for this person from now on. Such is life, as they say. It isn't fair, and I can super relate to OP about just wanting to have a second chance to redo things. But we gotta make do with what we got, right? Liking the video so far though, and I hope you do, so please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so yeah, you don't miss out on any of my upcoming videos, but it seriously does help keep me going, and of course it helps keep the channel going too. Now let's get back to the stories. Story 4. My mother was cruel for so many years. I had a terrible few weeks. A friend of mine had passed away from a car crash. Another friend had been diagnosed with cancer, and I'd been dealing with my parents arguing every day, the police being called to our house nightly, and the pressure of upcoming exams. One night I was home alone with my mom, and I had come downstairs to get some water because I had a headache from crying. My mom stood at the bottom of the stairs and told me that she hoped my friend with cancer would pass away during the operation. So after years of just putting up with her cruelty, I snapped a little and started swinging. Obviously, this was a bad idea on my part. I got roughed up. Mom then went out. I don't really remember what happened immediately after, but I remember that an hour or so later, I was sitting on my bed knitting and injured. It's a weird thing to remember. I'm pretty sure I was quite deeply in shock and my mind had just decided to pretend nothing was wrong for a while. Anyway, after this, my sister had come home and had taken me to my aunt's house where they took pictures of all the injuries in case I wanted to go to the police. I stayed there for a night but felt like a nuisance, so the next night I told them that I was going to stay with a friend. Instead, I went down to a local park and stayed there at night in a shelter, kind of like a bus shelter with a bench. At night, I sat up awake, paced a lot to keep warm. I felt very vulnerable there in the dark, alone. Every morning I'd go off to school and then go back to the park. I wore makeup to mask my black eyes and told my teachers I'd had an accident in Taekwondo and wore long sleeves to hide the bruises and scratches. After school, I'd nap in a sunny spot in the park. Honestly, it was peaceful there. I felt safer in the park than I had at home in years. I also had 2 sleepovers with friends during this week. I didn't tell them I was sleeping rough. I hadn't even told them about my home life. So yeah, after 5 nights at the park and 2 nights at friends' houses, I was told my mom had left and moved somewhere else. I came back home and I didn't tell anyone that I hadn't been staying at friends' houses for all of that week. My dad never acknowledged what happened and continued to fight for the marriage for a while. I don't blame him though. I have to remember that he had been the victim from my mother for years at that point. All in all, it was cold and scary and just so tiring. But I found it to be peaceful and so much better than being at home while my mom was actually there. Story 5. It was 3 weeks before my birthday and I ran away to my older sister's house out of state. My mom was extremely cruel, physical and emotional, and told me that as soon as I turned legal, she was going to burn all my belongings. She made sure to mention my driver's license, birth certificate, and social security card, and kick me out into the streets. She already stole all my money, since I wasn't legally old enough to have my own bank account. Every month when I got paid, so I knew if she burned all my belongings, I'd be ruined. I ran away while she went on vacation and took what belongings I could fit into my friend's car. I cashed out what money I had left in my account, less than $400, and hid at my sister's place in the meantime. My mom lied to the police and lied about my age, a junkie, attempted self-harm, and that I ran away with my 32-year-old boyfriend who was an armed substance dealer. The police found me 4 days before my birthday and tackled me to the asphalt, assuming I was armed. They were very angry when they booked me and found out I was almost of legal age and clearly not on substances or with any old man. Legally, they had to send me back to live with my mother, so I stayed in custody for 3 days and was about to be transported back to her, but thankfully turned 18 before that happened. Turns out all the belongings I left behind were indeed burned and my driver's license was suspended since parents can legally do that to minors. Thank God I managed to save all the important things before she got her hands on them. I'm now 27, married and pregnant. I went to so much therapy to work through all the trauma I experienced as a child, and luckily managed to create a happy and successful life for myself. I haven't spoken to her since I ran away. I've seen her randomly over the years, like at my grandma's funeral, my little sister's high school play, and when I helped that same little sister move out of that awful house when she turned 18. I don't plan on including her in my life, ever. To add, at the time, I had a full-blown panic attack when I saw her at the funeral since I was only 19. All the trauma came rushing back, especially since she decided to walk up to me and try to start a confrontation. She said, "Is that what you're wearing to a funeral?" Thankfully, my boyfriend stepped in between us, asked her to move along, and told her this funeral wasn't about her. She tried a few more times to talk to me, but I stayed silent while he walked me away from the situation. And yes, the rest of the family knows she's crazy. I have an aunt and uncle and their 3 kids who essentially welcomed me into their family and gave me the love I never got as a child. However, some other family members are still close with her, but they're not also mentally well, so it makes sense. I steer clear of those family members. I once asked an uncle why he chooses to have a relationship with her, and he shrugged and said, "She probably means well, she's your mom, you know?" And when I told him about all the stuff I endured at home, he just got annoyed and told me I was making it up. Never bothered to have a relationship with him after that conversation. I'm so glad to hear she was able to spin this around to be in a happier situation and make a better life for herself. Story 6. Live with my dad, and after a few years of emotional cruelty, he snapped and hurt me. I can't remember much more. On autopilot, I took my wallet, phone, and charger and just left. I didn't really have an idea of where to go, so I felt my best chances were to go to the train station and see from there on. I got a response from a friend in another city where I could stay and wanted to leave town since I was scared and had the feeling the police were searching for me. They were. I had like €40 to my name, and to save money, I decided to walk instead of taking the bus. Maybe the most movie moment out of my life is walking along a straight road with water next to it. We just have had a few hot summer days, and while the sun was going down, thunderstorms rolled in. Adrenaline worn off, and I realized I had pain and was limping. Headache, dizzy, but also an overwhelming feeling of liberation. It started to rain, and I realized my screw up for not taking my coat. I only wore a t-shirt, and it was getting cold. In the distance, I saw a bus stop with one person waiting. Good, the last bus hasn't left yet. I must have looked like crap because the guy, like 40 years old, waiting there, started talking to me. I told him what happened, and he said he already felt weird energy around me. He offered a place to sleep, but I refused because, it felt weird. I refused, and he understood. We smoked grass together, he paid for my bus ticket, and exchanged numbers. I always regretted not taking the offer, but that's another story. The next day we hung out and he bought food for me. I decided to contact friends who were worried and promised them to come back. This story will always stay with me. It kickstarted major changes in my life, still affecting me today. I stood up for myself. And if you're wondering why I regret not taking up the man's offer, it's because, the friend I was going to showed a different side. He proposed going into the city to get drinks, and I agreed because I wanted to get my mind off of things. When we arrived at the place, it was a club. I was expecting a bar, had no choice but to go along and felt pretty crappy but made the best out of it. He was being normal to me all night till we got back to his place. I don't know why, but he expected something else. He didn't come on to me but got grumpy when I refused, basically ignored me after that. I left the next day as soon as I could. Looking back, I would have been safer with my guardian stranger. Life got a little better, but as soon as I turned legal, I was on my own and things got worse. Today, I'm okay, still struggling, but independent. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this one, so I'll catch you in that video, and thank you for spending time with me here.